He thought he was meeting a 15-year-old girl, but when Jeremy Dwayne Gibson arrived at her home, he walked into a trap. Instead of a teenager, it was her family waiting, and they tackled him to the ground. A father's protective instinct and a carefully planned sting turned the tables on a predator. Today, we look at 5 cases of predators who were caught red-handed and instantly regretted it. Bruce Caval Menely. On April 17, 2024, a sting operation by Seattle's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force ended in the fatal shooting of a 67-year-old man named Bruce Caval Menely. On the day of the operation, Menely believed he was going to meet 2 young girls, aged 7 and 11, for illicit purposes. However, what he didn't know was that undercover officers were waiting for him in the hotel room. According to reports, Menely arrived at the hotel and was met by 3 officers, all clearly identifiable in police uniforms. The moment the door opened and the officers started to identify themselves, Menely backed away and pulled a handgun from his coat. A scuffle quickly ensued, and as the officers tried to disarm him, 1 gunshot was heard. 2 officers responded by firing multiple shots, with around 30 bullets counted during the incident. Menely was pronounced dead at the scene, while 1 officer sustained a minor graze wound from the gunfire. Menely's background adds another layer of complexity to this case. He had a distinguished 40-year military career, serving in various high-ranking medical positions, including as the director of the hospital at the U.S. Navy base in Guantanamo Bay. He was also deployed to Afghanistan, commanding medical teams in Kandahar province. Menely retired in 2016, but just 1 year later, he was arrested in a prostitution sting in Bremerton, Washington. This event was an early sign that his personal life was unraveling, as the police discovered he had been seeking out illegal activities. This moment in his life could have served as a wake-up call, a chance to change his behavior and seek help. Instead, Menely continued down a destructive path that eventually led to his involvement with the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Mark Stanley. Next up is Mark Stanley, another predator caught in a horrifying situation that led to instant consequences. On January 2, 2020, the 60-year-old man was caught red-handed by a father in Richmond, Virginia. The father walked in on Stanley molesting his girlfriend's 14-year-old daughter. Stanley had been trusted around the family, but behind that trust, he harbored despicable intentions. That particular day, when the father entered the room and saw what was happening, he acted on instinct. The father immediately began beating Stanley, taking out all the rage and pain that no doubt flooded him upon seeing his daughter being harmed. Stanley, completely caught off guard, had no time to defend himself or even process what was happening. By the time the police arrived, Stanley was in a state of disarray, severely beaten, while the father made no attempts to flee the scene, fully accepting responsibility for his actions in defense of his daughter. After the police assessed the situation, Stanley was taken into custody and later charged with several crimes, including indecent liberties with a child. This case not only exposes the disgusting behavior of a man abusing the trust of those around him, but also demonstrates the lengths a parent will go to protect their child when caught in such a horrifying situation. The father, while physically reacting out of rage, was ultimately not charged by the authorities, as it was clear that his actions stemmed from an emotional response to an unspeakable crime. What's important to note here is that this case reminds us of the immediate and unpredictable nature of justice in some instances. Stanley, who likely thought he could get away with this abuse, learned that his crime had consequences far more immediate than he ever expected. In this case, justice wasn't just served through the legal system. It came in the form of a parent's instinct to protect their child at all costs. Sha Foster. What happens when a retired Marine takes matters into his own hands after his daughter is abused by his very own friend? Let's find out, because this harrowing event actually took place in Lorena, Texas in 2014. It all started when Moore was rushed to the hospital with what was initially suspected to be a brain aneurysm. His wife, Leone, accompanied him, leaving their children at home. During this time, Sha Foster, a family friend and neighbor, offered to check on the kids. Leone told him not to, but Foster went over anyway. While there, Foster molested Madeline, a horrific act that would later be revealed as part of a longer history of abuse. 2 days later, Madeline, accompanied by her mother to a doctor's appointment, began to open up about Foster's actions. What started with a comment about Foster texting while driving led to the heartbreaking revelation that Foster had been abusing her since she was 9 years old. Madeline described incidents that took place in her bed, Foster's truck, and even the shower. Shocked and devastated, Leone took this information to her husband, and they immediately went to the police. However, much to their frustration, the police said they couldn't arrest Foster right away without more concrete evidence, leaving the family feeling powerless. Unwilling to let Foster get away, Moore, a former Marine, decided to take matters into his own hands. Using Madeline's phone, he set a trap for Foster. He sent text messages pretending to be his daughter, luring Foster back to the house. Moore waited in the bathroom with the shower running to make it seem like no one else was home. When Foster arrived, expecting to find a vulnerable teenager, he was instead confronted by an enraged father. The confrontation was recorded on Moore's phone. The audio captures the intense moment, with Moore shouting at Foster and demanding to know what he had done to his daughter. Foster denied everything, but Moore wasn't swayed. The situation escalated as Foster tried to escape, but Moore tackled him to the ground and delivered a beating. By the time the police arrived, Foster was subdued, bruised, and unable to run. This evidence, including the audio recording, played a critical role in the subsequent trial. In 2016, Foster was sentenced to 55 years in prison on multiple counts, including indecency with a child. Moore's actions sped up the case, providing the critical evidence needed to ensure Foster was held accountable. While Moore's actions were celebrated by many, the police cautioned against taking the law into one's own hands. Police Chief Tom Dixon noted that Moore could have faced serious charges had things escalated further, and urged others to let law enforcement handle such situations. Raymond Earl Brooks. Imagine finding out that the person who robbed your child of their innocence, the one who committed unthinkable acts, served only a fraction of their sentence and was walking free. What would you do? For Jay Maynor, this was the breaking point. Here's the full background. Raymond Earl Brooks, who was Julia Maynor's adoptive grandfather, had molested her when she was between the ages of 4 and 9. The abuse came to light when Julia was 8, and in 2002, Brooks pleaded guilty to the crime. Despite his heinous actions, Brooks served only 27 months of a 5-year prison sentence before being released. He was then placed on the Alabama Sex Offender Registry, but his relatively light punishment angered Julia's father, Jay Maynor. In 2014, 12 years after the abuse had first been uncovered, Jay Maynor's frustrations boiled over. One evening in June, following an emotional discussion with his daughter about the abuse, Maynor made the decision to confront Brooks. Fueled by years of guilt and anger over what had happened to his daughter, he set off on his motorcycle to seek retribution. On his way to confront Brooks, Maynor stopped at a convenience store where he shot at another man, someone he mistakenly believed had been abusing his stepdaughter. Fortunately, this individual was not harmed, but the incident heightened the gravity of Maynor's actions. After leaving the store, Maynor continued to Brooks's house, where he shot the 59-year-old twice, killing him in his front yard. Maynor was arrested later that day and charged with both murder and attempted murder. In November 2016, he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and second-degree attempted murder, accepting a 40-year prison sentence. Maynor decided to take a plea deal in part to spare his daughter the trauma of having to testify and relive the abuse in court. Julia, now an adult and a mother of 3, expressed gratitude for her father's actions, calling him the best for standing up for her in the face of her abuse. Despite a public campaign for Maynor's pardon, with thousands signing petitions calling for his release, legal experts doubt the sentence will be overturned. Prosecutors maintained that, regardless of the emotional context, Maynor's actions still amounted to murder. Brooks, although guilty of molesting Julia, had already served his time, and the courts could not act based on emotions alone. If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into similar content, go ahead and click on the videos displayed on your screen right now. Each one offers more captivating stories and insights that you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.